So tonight is the official public hearing for our 24-25 school budget. If you remember last month, I did an in-depth dive of basically how we build our budget and what our numbers are this year. We've been very successful in many ways, and I will touch on each of those things again this evening. So as a quick overview, I have, if you were here last week, I promise I did remove a few slides so I don't bore you completely to death. And this doesn't look like it's the right presentation. So it's okay. I'm going to use it. So what is a budget? I'm going to skip the ones. I promise the revised one actually does include our interim superintendent, Dr. Shadow. What is a budget? This is basically our tool to run the district. It delivers the financial plan to maintain the district's facilities, mandated and non-mandated programs, and to provide students with a thorough and efficient education. Our process in the budgeting role begins actually in November, the year before the budget actually is implemented, which is really kind of curious when you consider we're doing a budget from July 1st through 6/30 of each year. We actually start to project and budget in November the year before. So if you can imagine, it's quite an extensive process. We start with sending out financial records to each of the district's supervisors. They're able to take a look at where they think they're going to be each year based on enrollment, based on needs of classroom. We start to pull all of those things together. And at the end of the day, we end up here hopefully in the end of April sometime, and we get a finalized tentative budget and supporting documentations that then go off to the county office as a final budget and to the Department of Education. Hunterdon Central, just like every school district in the state of New Jersey, has faced several challenges. We've faced challenges, but we've also had many successes, and we have been able to do this in a tight manner because we pay attention to what goes on day to day. Some of our challenges. Some of these things I'll go over briefly, and there will be a few slides that I'll get into a little bit deeper. So just like everyone else in the state of New Jersey, we have been experiencing state aid cuts over the last 7 years that have been quite substantial. We also are experiencing declining enrollment. We have had some staff vacancies, which have been challenges in filling, but also we've been able to experience some successes with that as well, because some positions we were able to absorb through attrition, which helps with the declining enrollment. We also have there are several programs that are operated at the Hunterdon County Polytech. You'll hear us talk about academies, which are full-day programs where our students actually go to other campuses for the full day of education. And then we also have shared time programs where our students are here for their reading, writing, and arithmetic, and I apologize if those aren't the official terms. And they may go to the Polytech for early child care education, or they might go for auto shop, or they might go for nursing. So they're getting their main education here, but we're taking them across the street, and they're getting the other half of their education there. That's what we call shared time enrollment. And I'll get into a little bit more detail of how each of those hurts and helps us as a district from a state aid perspective. Our utility costs, our utility costs continue to increase year over year. Over the last 2 years, we've gone up almost 26%. Property and casualty insurance is projected to go up another 15% this year compared to last year. Cyber insurance is up another 30%. I think we all experienced that. We've been challenged to get that underwritten. We have been successful in doing so, but it is at a pretty hefty cost. Transportation route costs are projected to increase year over year for lots of reasons. You all heard that we have been continually struggling to get bus drivers, not just Hunterdon Central, but I think the state of New Jersey. Some of that is due to the requirements and the standards that they need to meet in order to be able to drive buses. Contracted routes, the bids have gone up exponentially. A lot of that is because there's no competition. So when you only have 1 or 2 vendors that service your area, what happens is they're able to really charge whatever they want. So we work really hard to try to get a competitive process, but again, we're kind of stuck with who's in our area and where they can tier them with other routes. Fuel costs, of course, like everybody's own gasoline, is going up substantially. And the cost of new buses, if we can get them. We're ordering buses 2 and 3 years out. So we just took receipt of 3 buses that we ordered 2 years ago. So what's interesting is we're able to get the chassis. They're obviously no good without the engines. We're waiting back-ordered engines. So we're getting there. We're consistent. We're on a good replacement plan. However, they are getting substantially more expensive. Other employee benefits, as your employment costs go up, obviously, so do your unemployment, pensions, workers' comp, and disability insurances. Chapter 44 we'll talk about. This is one of my favorite topics. We'll talk about that in more detail later on in the presentation. And expiration of our ESSER grants. You've heard that we have received substantial amounts of money. We've had COVID relief. We've had what's called ESSER grants, and they've extended over several years. The 23-24 budget, which is the budget we're currently living in, they expire. So when you hear Mr. Cole talk about IXL and some of the other assessment tools that we have available to us, those programs were put into place as beta testing through the ESSER grants. And because they've been so successful, we have absorbed them into our budget, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. But a few of those things are we now test at all grade levels for the PSATs. We do have IXL and another assessment tool called the Link It. That, again, is a tool used for the students to measure where they are and how we can provide them with better supports. And we also have a Talking Points, which is an additional translation program. As our population continues to change and become more diverse, we're finding that we need more translation tools in different languages. And this, again, these are just 4 examples of monies that were paid out of previous year's ESSER grants. As they're expiring, we then absorb them into this year's budget. And I think that total was about $140,000 year over year. So to speak a little bit more detail about how the state aid reductions have looked over the last several years, I apologize. This year we were really lucky. You're hearing Tom's River losing millions of dollars. You're hearing this a lot all over the state of New Jersey. We are very thankful in Hunterdon Central that we lost $31,000 year over year. However, over the last 7 years, we've had to absorb $1.13 million in state aid, either by reducing cost or it gets passed to the taxpayer. So that's where a lot of school districts are currently. If you look, it's almost a 20% decrease in state aid. This is more detail in terms of what our enrollment numbers are looking like. You can see as we're continuing to decline, but I'm going to kind of try to do this in coordination with 2 slides from here. We talked a little bit about our students that go to the Polytech. We have students on a shared time basis. If they go to the Polytech on a shared time basis, since we're a Hunterdon County school, we get to count half of them in our enrollment count. So that's why you see these numbers that are 0.5s. That's just because we happen to have students at an odd number that are going to the Polytech shared time program. We also have students that go to the academies. So they have a computer science program, they have an animal science program, and the other few are escaping me. But when they go to that program, because they're a Hunterdon County school, we don't get to count them at all. So what that means is they come out of these numbers. So over the last, let me see if I can scroll this properly. Over the last 7 years, we've gone from 29 students going full-time. So that was my reduction year over year, if you will, going to the Polytech that I was unable to count. This year's budget, it's 155 students. So that's about 120 some students. That makes my enrollment go down. What does that mean? We don't get funded for them. So as we go to the ASSA and we start to look at this enrollment, those numbers are coming out. So if you see these slowly going down, they're going down for other reasons. But that's a big number if you start to look at the number of students that are going to the Polytech. So our goals here are always to bring those students back in-house as we continue to build programs and encourage them to stay at Hunterdon Central for programs that are as good, if not better, than what they have to offer at the Polytech. But this is becoming more and more of a challenge. And the reason it's a bigger issue from a financial perspective is not only do we pay tuition for those 155 students to go to Polytech, and I think it's about $12,000, a little less than $12,000 a year per student. I also have to transport them. So a bus, I mean, 155 kids, if I can put them on a 54 passenger bus, that's a little more than 3 buses, right? It's about 3 buses. A bus is costing me about $100,000 a year. So I've got the tuition, I've got the cost of the bus, and I also have the reduction in my state aid that is really, really difficult to explain and get your head wrapped around, but that's substantial as well. So we're kind of getting hit from many different directions just on these students alone. So that's why this is kind of important to talk about. Yeah, we're seeing declining enrollment. There's a lot of reasons for that. We are just overall seeing declining enrollments, although we're really excited. The elementaries are starting to see more kids, so they'll eventually get here. But this is something that we really have to work on. Chapter 44, this is my favorite. Health benefits is very, very difficult in any district, anytime you have people. This is a number that you can't control. Chapter 44 is a law that went into effect in July 1st of 2020. And basically it was a negotiations between the teachers union and the government. And basically they said, we used to live under what was called Chapter 78. Chapter 78 was a 4-year program where it began to charge staff for contributions towards their medical benefits. And it was a substantial amount of money, going from 0 to all of a sudden based on your salary. On average, it was probably about 20 to 25% of the cost of the premium. So as the cost of the premium went up, your cost of your contribution went up. So that became more of a challenge because your salaries weren't necessarily increasing at the same rate. So this is a brilliant concept. It's absolutely a brilliant concept. What the thought was is what we'll do is we'll offer you a less robust plan. Theoretically, it should cost less, right? Less robust plan, you don't have to contribute as much. What we're going to do is we're going to tie the contribution at a much smaller rate to your salary instead of tying it to the cost of the benefit. Brilliant, except the cost of the program did not come out less than what it would have been under Chapter 78. They did offer a less robust program. The cost of the premium on a family coverage is about $1,000 a year. However, we get anywhere from, on an average person, we were probably getting 20% of the cost of the premium, and now we're getting 2% of the cost of the salary. So since this law has been implemented, we've lost $240,000. Now, when I say lost, it just means we've had to absorb it into our budget. So our health benefit costs actually have gone up, even though the state of New Jersey tells us this is going to work. It hasn't. It hasn't. This law is in effect for 7 years, so I think we have to live with it until 2027. I think we've got a couple more years. And then they'll reevaluate, and they'll make it something different. So those were the bad things. How were we able to do it? Even though we're absorbing Chapter 44, we've been able to be very successful in where we have been with our health benefit cost increases year over year. And I do have a more detailed slide on that. Our out-of-district students, this is just timing. This is nothing that we're doing here or not doing here. This is just timing of students as they go through and age out through the system. We have 12 less students going out of district next year because they've either successfully completed their program or they've graduated. That is just, it's just happened to be this year, which helped us in our budgeting process. Inflation, in a situation like ours, because we're well prepared with our reserves, what happens when we have inflation? Our interest rates go up. We have a really good, robust interest rates revenues that we currently are pulling in. That also, too, helps us stay under cap. We do this every year. We're very tight with our budgets. We pay attention to what's spent out of every budget. My supervisors, our administrators, everybody takes a really close look at this, and we take it seriously, and we pay attention, and we make sure we stay where we're supposed to be every year. Another reason why we're able to come in under cap. And then, of course, the declining enrollment. The declining enrollment, as I said, it's a double whammy, right? The declining enrollment is going down, but as things start to work out in the classroom, as teachers retire or resign and go to other places, some of those positions we're able to absorb into our budget and not replace at this time. So that's another way we were able to come in under cap this year. Actually, the last 2 years. This is just more detail as to where we've been when we talked about our health benefits. As of 1/1/21, we went to what was called the SHIF program, which is a school health insurance fund. It's the way the state of New Jersey's program should work. It's a pooled resource. They're very selective in terms of who can get in. I mean, if you can imagine, if you have automobile insurance, if you have a lot of auto accidents, what happens? Your insurance rates go up. So they take good programs with good experience rating, if you will. In our first year, we were able to save $954,000. And since then, over the last few years, in the year of 2022, our rates went down 1.6%. In 2023, we went up 1.4%. In 2023, we went up 3.4%. And this year, we forecasted 7.8%. Those rates have not come in yet. An average of 4.2% over the last 4 years. That's excluding the 954 we saved right out of the box. And if you could take a look at what the state health benefits plan has done, is cumulatively, they have increased 25% year over year, and they're already projecting that they're in a bad place, and next year we'll also have double digits. So I think overall we've done a really good job marketing our plans, taking a look to see what competition is out there, and working to keep our health benefits under control. And this is at no risk to the employee, and what I mean by that is contractually they are offered equal to or better. So if we switch plans or if we do any of those things, there are certain things that we have to maintain, and it's always equal to or better benefits. As I discussed earlier, we are anticipating 12 additional students that will not be going out of district next year. So just naturally, that's going to save some tuition expenditures year over year. Our revenue sources, I'll go through these rather quickly. Sadly, school districts really don't have a lot of opportunity to generate revenue. We try to be as creative as we can, but you know, if you work in industry and you make widgets, you just make more widgets. If you need more money, hopefully you sell them, right? In New Jersey, or in school districts, we don't have an opportunity to do that. We have very limited ability to raise money. We do have a little bit of flexibility, as I discussed, in interest income, but the bulk of our revenue, 76, almost 77%, comes from the tax levy. So we're really mindful of that. However, we don't have a lot of control because, as you can see, as our state aid goes down, there's not really a lot of ways that we're able to increase revenue other than tax levy. So we really are mindful of what happens with our state aid. We first look to see if we have anything on the expense side that we can eliminate or tighten before we go to tax levy. And we've been very, very successful in doing that over the last several years. These are the specific things. The local tax levy, as you can see, is going up 1.03, so a little bit more than $1 million. That number is I think it's 1.75%, where our cap is 2% year over year. There are such things as interest income. We do have a little bit of facility usage where we rent the space. We have some rack utilities. We do some shared services agreements. So that's all included in here. But the big number here in terms of this, the size of this number is actually interest income. State aid, as you can see, is down. There's the $31,000. And our federal aid is up $12,000 year over year. This is a semi-program. This is a Medicaid program that we're required to do by law. They give us this number, and it's never right. Debt service fund. This district does not have any debt service. We were successful in 2021, I believe, to paying off our final notes on our past projects. And due to the ability of past administrations and business administrators, we've really saved for a rainy day. So when we talk about capital projects, we talk about maintenance projects, those are all things that are planned in advance, and we save the money in advance, so we don't need to go back out to the taxpayers to save more money or to ask for more money. It's all sitting on our books. This year we're asking for projects of $7.6 million. You'll see a slide of that as we go into more detail. So our total revenues and expenditures were, because we are a school and a not-for-profit, it's fund accounting. So your revenues and expenditures have to equal. There's no profit or loss. Expenditures that are included in our general fund, this is something that I call Fund 11, regular instructional expenses, special education, instructional support services, which include library counseling services, health office curriculum supervisors and staff training, administrative expenses, which are the superintendent, principal, human resources, business and information technology offices, operations, which is maintenance, custodial, grounds and security, our transportation department. Then we have all of our benefits and taxes. Equipment, that's what I call Fund 12. Those are any assets greater than $2,000 we have to book as a fixed asset. And capital projects is also running through Fund 12, and those are things that we budget to come out each year. So this is kind of the makeup, if you will, of those categories. And we're pretty good with where we are. We want to spend most of our money here, which is in instructional. Benefits are those things that we're unable to control. A lot of this is our health benefits, which is driven up substantially. So this is the breakdown of each of those in each of those areas. We're pretty consistent year over year. You see a big drop in capital projects, and that's just because we budgeted more projects last year than we did this year. That's just an in and out of like almost a savings account. It doesn't impact the taxpayers. Grant funding, these are things, you'll hear me say Fund 20. Fund 20 are our IDEA grants, our ESEA grants, which is what we used to call NCLB. These are monies that are given to us through the state of New Jersey, either federal or state. And this is down because by law I'm required to budget 85% of the prior year allotment. So at 85%, if I get more, I book more, but I spend more. So it's a complete wash. As I get the money, we spend what we get. We're really cautious about making sure we spend all of our money. You don't want to give that back. The biggest piece of our educational expenditures, as in any district, is people. People. Our employees' salaries are 54% of our overall budget, and the benefits are 23.6% for a total of 77.6% of our total budget has to do with people. I know we're here to educate kids, but we're also in the people business. Reserve funds are things, our capital reserve and our maintenance reserve. Capital reserves are projects that are saved for, that are part of our long-range facility plan. This is roofing, HVAC, building maintenance, classroom restorations, things like that. These all have to be approved by the DOE before we're able to withdraw from there. Maintenance reserves, you'll see actually coming up, I think, on this agenda. We have some projects that are our maintenance reserve. For example, we have a climbing wall outside that is almost close to ready to fail inspection, which means we can't use it. So we have to put money into it to maintain it. That comes out of what we call maintenance reserve because it's not forecasted in our budget. But that's something that we're able to withdraw from maintenance reserve, pay for the project. If there's anything left over, we're able to put it back into the maintenance reserve. That's not something that can roll to the budget or can roll to fund balance. Neither one of these two can. Once they're here, they stay there forever, unless we spend them. So these are the projects that are budgeted in this, the 24-25 budget. And what's really exciting about these is you see $7.628 million. These are what were called ROD grants. The state of New Jersey came out with more ROD grants this year. It's a regular operating district grant. I think the last time they did this was in 2010. And basically these are for certain classifications of projects. And it's based on safety and security and building envelope, those types of things. We go through a grant process. We have been approved for all of these, and actually once we complete the project, we will get up to 40% of the actual cost of this money back. So the actual expenditure to the district is up to 40% less than this. I have to show it this way because it's eligible costs. And that's just the way the state of New Jersey tells me I have to show it. But the good news is we applied for 15 and we got 12. I am not very popular at the county office right now, but I try to get all the money I can. New Jersey state law mandates that the annual tax levy can increase no more than 2%. This budget increases 1.75%. The additional 2.25% goes in what's called banked cap for use in future years. So if something happens in future years, we're able to reserve that money and pull it into our budget without having any struggles with the Department of Education. Last year, we also did not budget to cap. I think we budgeted 1.8%. So right now, at the conclusion of this budget, we have $263,000 in bank capped that we're able to use in a future year. Tax rate calculation, because we're regional, and this is a little bit tricky. Remember, I was talking about enrollment and all of those calculations that go into that. The other piece of this is equalization value. And all property owners in the state of New Jersey struggle with this a little bit because our property values have exceeded so substantially over the last several years due to the market. So as equalization value goes up and enrollment goes down, our state aid goes down. So there's an entire calculation that we go through to determine what these numbers are. Based on those numbers, it determines a share. Because we're regional, we have 5 sending districts. This calculation determines the share of the total that gets allocated to each sending district. And then once we determine the share of the total tax levy, then based on your ratables, which is a whole nother story, that's given to us by each of your town clerks, we then are able to calculate the tax rate. So overall, the tax rate, I should read from here. This is the calculation. So here's your equalization values, your elementary enrollment, your regional enrollment. So these are the students that actually come to the high school. And then you get a percentage and a share of the total levy based on these numbers. So for the current year, we are projecting that Delaware Township's taxes are going up $10.93 per 100,000 of assessed values. But over the last 3 years, or 1.92%, but over the last 3 years, it's gone down $27.98. East Amwell's going down $25.32, or 4.38%. Over the last 3 years, it's gone down $130.90. Flemington's going, tax changes going, they're going down $35.41, or 7.72, for a total over the last 3 years of 77 down. Raritan is going up $28 and 12 cents. A lot of that has to do with enrollment and equalization values, for a total of 4.43%, or $17.73 over the last 3 years. And Reddington is going down $11.64, or 1.9%. In the current year. So by controlling our budget, we've also been able to, and not having to go out for debt service, we've also been successful in trying to keep these numbers down as well. So at this point in our process, we're here. It's very exciting. Once we get approval tonight, this will go to the county office as a final motion. I'll certify taxes through each of the clerks, and we could put the budget hopefully to bed until I have to implement it and put it in the system to start to spend for next year. Any questions? Awesome. Thank you.
Sorry, one quick question.
Sure.
There was a concern raised at the meeting last month that our policies could put us in jeopardy of losing, or the fact that our policies are not completely up to date with state definitions. We are at risk of losing funding. Is that a concern that you have in implementing this budget?
In implementing this budget? No. No, I don't have enough detail about that. I know that there are some things that could cause us to be at risk. I don't know of anything at this point. I'm pretty comfortable with what we have at the moment, based on what we have available to us.
Any other questions? As
Thank
always,
you.
thank you, Mrs. Spitzer.
I have no idea how to make it go away, so you might just have to look at my baby. I'm sorry. Thank you, Jess.
All right. So I think at this time, we're going to open the platform for anybody that has a public comment on an item under motion on the agenda tonight. Anybody like to have a comment about anything on the agenda? Hearing none, I will close public comment, and we will move to organizational items. So I know one has to do with some adjustment of dates of the school calendar. Dr. Shadow or Ms. Spitzer, I don't know if either of you have any commentary?
I think that the the discussion surrounded around how late we're going to get out this year, next year. And the alternative was putting 2 days prior to Labor Day and having teachers, staff members come back for pre-service. And that was a 50-50 situation. The other way you get out earlier is to start earlier. And you start, a week or two before Labor Day. However, I would never recommend doing that without educating the public as to what is coming. Because people make plans 1 and 2 and 3 years out, and they're renting houses 3 days or 3 years in advance. And if you're going to think about moving back the school year, which is a good idea, by the way, because really what you do is you get extra instructional days before those important tests come at the end of the year. However, you really have to educate the public and get the faculty on board with that. So we decided we're going to leave it alone, and we did put another day in for Calamity Day or Snow Day, because we don't want to be in the same situation we are this year. That you never know with Jersey weather.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Shadow. So that will be the revised 24-25 school calendar and your HIB report as detailed earlier.
Yes.
Correct? Right?
I don't know if it's revised. I think this is the original.
Is it? We've talked about it so much in committee that it feels like we've been through it a couple of times, but okay.
This is next year's calendar?
Yeah.
Correct.
It's the original, it's the first time you're approving it, so it's not revised yet.
Okay.
It usually happens on September 1st, and it's just
Okay.
sorry. So,
All right. So can I have a motion to approve the originally presented school calendar for 2024-25 and Dr. Shadow's HIB report? And a second? Thank you. Any commentary on it? Mrs. Spitzer, roll call, please.
Mrs. Bluntfeld?
yes.
Mrs. Duggan?
Yes.
Ms. Gong?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Reimer? Mrs. Santangelo?
Yes.
And Mr. Fowler?
Yes.
All yes, motion carries.
Thank you. Mr. Reimer, Student Life?
Student Life and Programming Committee has 2 motions to move tonight. The first is having to do with the operation of the summer session as recommended by the interim superintendent, Dr. Shadow. And the second is a retrospective approval. We kind of all approved prior to this meeting, the overnight field trip for our robotics team, who we heard a couple of times a little bit about heading down to Houston, Texas, and representing Hunterdon Central so well. And again, a huge congratulations to that team. Those are the 2 items for the Student Life and Programming Committee this evening.
Thank you. Can I have a motion for them? You're moving it, right? You're moving it?
I move to
Yes, to approve the
those 2 items.
Second? Okay, any commentary, any notes? If not, roll call, please.
Mrs. Bluntfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Duggan?
Yes.
Ms. Gong?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Reimer? Mrs. Santangelo?
Yes.
And Mr. Fowler?
Yes,
All yes, motion carries.
thank you so much. Ms. Duggan? O&T?
Okay, we have 14 items tonight to move. The first 3 financial reports, the invoices and the transfers. The fourth one is an Eric West Safety Grant. These are These are for safety projects. There's $6,000 that would be awarded to Hunterdon Central and $2,000 to the Joint Transportation Committee. Number 5 is move to authorize the submission for the application for extraordinary special education aid. So this is just to allow for that application. Number 6 is to move to approve food service management proposal from Pumptonium. This is something that we have to do every 4 years. 7 is basically to scrap an old Dodge Caravan that we have in our automobile fleet. There's the value there. Number 8 is a withdrawal from the maintenance reserve for the preschool playground equipment. Number 9 is a withdrawal for maintenance for the batting cages for baseball. 10 is awarding the wireless access point and Cloud IQ controller refresh project bid. This is going to PBG Networks. And this is, our access points apparently are 6 years old this year, so it's time to kind of do a refresh there. And the good news about this project is that it's eligible for some up to 40% funding through E-rate. So we can get some money back on that. The 11th item is to accept a donation of camera equipment from George Hespy, I believe it is, for the Hunterdon Central School of Fine Arts Department. Number 12 is to accept a donation of some oral hygiene products. 13 is the second reading for the choice of vendor that we reviewed in the past. And number 14 is to approve the use of the Your Doctors In, or the Doctors In, for CDL physical exams. So with that, I'd like to move items O&T 1 through 14.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. Any conversation? Seeing none, Mrs. Spitzer, roll call, please.
Mrs. Blatfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Duggan?
Yes.
Ms. Gong?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Reimer?
Yes.
Mrs. Sanchangelo?
Yes.
And Mr. Fowler?
Yes. Mrs. Blatfield, you are up. Personnel.
So this is the month where we have a lot of motions in personnel. We have 39 motions, but most of them, it's because it's our annual renewals. So 316 through 338 are the renewals. I'm not going to go through them. I'll just say it's pretty much all of our staff, with the exception of a few, the HCEA, HCAA, unaffiliated, bus drivers divided into, we have employees who are tenured, acquiring tenured, non-tenured, et cetera. The couple that I'll just point out, though, we have HCAA administration and the JTC bus drivers. Both of those contracts are still being negotiated, and so those salaries are subject to change once the contracts are ratified and approved. Other items, starting with 3.1, we have 5 retirements, some with a lot of years of service. We have Heather Cole with 26 years, Mary Deichler, 21 years, Kathy Kane, 40 years, Anthony Ricardella, 25, and Carol Smith, 5 years. So thank you all for all your contributions to the district, and I wish you all well in retirement. 3.2, we have 2 resignations. 3.3, we have some contractual salary appointments. The one I'll point out here, we have a learning disabilities teacher consultant who is starting September 1st. You'll also see that same name in 3.5 as a per diem appointment, and that's because she's going to come in some days in June to learn about the caseload. Then we have 3-4, some hourly appointments for HCTV student techs. Skipping to 3-6, we have some chaperone appointments, some substitutes in 3-7. We have some curriculum writing in 3-8 that we're getting in before year end. 3-9, we have a home instructor. 3-10, AP testing overtime hourly work. And that's for needed to come in early to set up and stay late to clean up. We have a co-curricular advisor, unpaid Schedule C advisor for Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Then we have 3-12, an after-hours tutorial instructor. 3-13, some professional development. 3-14, we have a change to the dates for some of the 6th block stipends for some Spanish teachers because we have hired now a full-time Spanish teacher, so we no longer need those 6 blocks. 3-15, we have a unpaid leave of absence. And then finally, our last item is just some minor changes to some job descriptions, and hopefully everyone saw the red line versions that went out. And so I will move personnel 1 through 39.
Second.
Thank you. We have a second. Any conversation or commentary?
Lori, I just had a quick question. The longevity that's on here, how is that applied? Obviously, it's part of the contract, but is that like a one-time thing, or is it when the longevity that I see in the HCEA staff, I guess in item 16? Yeah, yeah, how is that?
Those are all part of the contract, yes.
Like one time?
No, once they,
Every year.
yes, once you hit a certain amount of longevity, you get a certain stipend, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Butterfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Duggan?
Yes.
Ms. Gong?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Reimer? Yes. Mrs. Santangelo?
Yes.
And Mr. Fowler?
Yes.
All yes, motion carries. Mr.
All
Fowler?
right. Yes. I was wondering about that, because it's nowhere in.
It is, it's actually under the presentation as an action item, I just.
You just skip over
Right,
it.
well, and we shouldn't do it until after public can comment on it if they wanted to, right? That's what,
Sure.
but, yeah, we can do that, unless you wanted to present again next month.
No,
Are you,
thank
okay?
No, no.
I've had it.
They need it down.
So,
again.
on behalf of Mrs. Spitzer's sanity, can I make a move to accept and adopt the resolution regarding this year's budget?
Second.
Any comments on it? Other than another wonderful job as always, Mrs. Spitzer?
Yes.
Yes. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Butterfield?
Yes.
Mrs. Duggan?
Yes.
Ms. Gong?
Yes.
Mrs. Kellogg?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Reimer? Mrs. Santangelo?
Yes.
And Mr. Fowler?
Yes.
All yes, motion carries. Thank you, Jesus.
All right, thank you. All right, other committees? I know we skipped communications this month. We did not meet this month. Correct. Red met. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it, I
I
believe.
would say yes, just informally, because you couldn't make it, and we still want to set up administration to be there, because I don't have experience with setting the agenda as chair and also doing the minutes. I don't mind doing either of those, I just want to do them at least in a collaborative, effort. So there was an informal reset, that's about as far as we got for now.
Okay, all right. Any other, I know we have JTC business, but before we get to that, any other committees?
I'll just give a little update on the superintendent search. So
Thank you.
we are just about wrapping up the engagement phase. I believe tomorrow is the last day for the survey, and we have a couple more focus groups tomorrow. We've had a pretty robust response, I think, from the staff. The response has been a little disappointing, I'm going to say, from the community. So I encourage anyone who's watching this, the survey is still open through tomorrow. It will not take long. I know the first question sounds a little bit like another climate and culture survey, but it's really not that. It's trying to get a feel for your thoughts about where we are now, and then there is a question to get everyone's thoughts about what you're looking for in the next superintendent. So I do encourage everyone to, if you haven't already done that, to go on and fill that out. And then tomorrow, it's sort of a catch-all. It's our in-person community focus group, and I believe, what time is that? It's at 7 o'clock in the little theater, right? Okay. So if you can make it, please do. It's a chance to really, get your views known. And then that will be it. Then we move on to kind of going over what the consultant has learned from all the focus groups and the surveys about what everyone is looking for in the next superintendent. They'll meet with the board, go over all of that, and then the next step is to start advertising and going through resumes.
Wonderful, thank you.
And we had a policy meeting this month. We don't have any action items, but we did have an excellent opportunity. Dr. Shadow was there, and he was gracious enough to invite all of the administrators who generally, I think, attend most of the different committees. So we had Dr. Shadow, Dr. Webb, Principal Brandt, and Ms. Cangelo Seahade were all there. They were able to really provide some really good insight on how the process has worked from kind of their end in the past. We got some really great ideas together for how that process will move forward. We got some feedback from different board members, which will be shared with the committee at the next meeting.
Great, thank you.
And finally, I'll give a quick update on the JTC. So very exciting news that the memorandum of agreement was signed on April 17th by all of the JTC members from Flem-Rare and Hunterdon Central. And it's moved on to, the salary guides have actually been signed off, I believe, right?
They've been sent back, correct.
Okay, and so the next step is to, for the Hunterdon Central Bus Drivers Association to ratify the contract, and then it'll come back to us, to our board, to do the same, and Flem-Rare will do the same, and then we should be done for now.
That's a one-year extension, correct?
Yes.
I don't know if we would discuss this now. I'm just curious if there's any update or any news about JTC and pre-K and where we stand with that. There's a lot of talk in the community or communication out there about it.
Yep. Yeah, that was actually a really good setup for exactly where I was going, so thank you. It was like we planned that one. So as Ms. O'Donnell reported, there has been some feedback that conversations in JTC have hit some friction points, as we've reported in the past. There has been some statements that have been published. Hunterdon Central has prepared a response, so I'll read that now into record and for everybody to understand where we're coming from with all of this. The Hunterdon Central Regional High School Board of Education supports the efforts of all its sending districts to expand the preschool programs and recognizes the long-term educational benefits of these programs. We also recognize that preschool expansion is a significant logistical undertaking that requires planning and collaboration from all stakeholders. We do disagree with Flemington Raritan's characterization of the challenges involved in launching a massive expansion of preschool transportation, as well as the accuracy of the information they have shared publicly. Nonetheless, we see neither value nor wisdom in litigating this dispute through a public war of words. We will instead continue to focus on all our efforts on finding solutions that do not jeopardize the safety and our drivers and our students. So that's our focus right now, is safety and driving that home. Everything else will fall in alignment. All right, any other committee reports? I don't think there is any other. Okay, if not, then we will open up for our second public comment forum. We will give 5 minutes for every speaker. If you could come to the podium, write down your name, contact information, and I will time you for 4 minutes. You'll hear a warning, then we'll go for another minute. And if you do have any commentary or would like to direct any of your statements, please feel free to direct them at me and not anybody else at this table.
Kane?
Yes.
Did I miss new business? Did we go through that already? For additional board business? I'm sorry.
That would, if you'd like, would you like
Okay.
to call something out quickly before?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted
That's
to
all right.
raise it as a point of concern, and I think the board should probably take a look at, is just some of the bathroom issues and cafeteria issues that have been raised, over a year at least now. Some of the students have come forward, talked about it, and I just think we should make it a priority. I would like to see it on the student life subcommittee meetings and maybe even O&T, and just discuss some of the ways that we can maybe improve that, because I know there's a lot of dissatisfaction with the students, and especially with the bathroom issues, whether it's various reasons, but some kids don't go to the bathroom at all, or there's a whole host of things. So I just wanted to raise that, and hoping that could be a priority.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
We'll work with you and see what items we can bring up at either SLP or O&T as
Okay.
is appropriate,
Yep.
and then
Okay.
bring them back to the board.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
Sure.
it. Sorry for the interruption.
No,